morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 14th episode of A Girl Like Me Live, which is a new interactive live streaming series advancing health and wellness discussions and education among women living with and vulnerable to HIV. Every 2 weeks, I, Cece Coven, will sit down with different co hosts to chat about key topics in our communities. In today's session, I will speak with Dr. Vickie Lynn about why language matters. I think that this is such an important conversation, and I'm so happy to be here with you. So, Vickie Lynn, do you mind just starting us off with some like introducing yourself, some of your affiliations, and how you came to know the Well Project?
I'm on mute. That's just something we do these days, right? Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Vickie Lynn, and thank you, Cece and the Well Project, for putting these together. I'm so excited to be here to talk about language. I first got involved with the Well Project. Oh my gosh, it's been almost a decade ago. I can't believe that it's been that long. I started out as a Girl Like Me blogger. I was a cab member for a while. I've done some other webinars and fact sheets and different things with the Well Project, and I'm just so excited to be here to talk about language. Um, I'm also a person who's been living with HIV for 36 years, so I'm not only a academic, but I'm also a woman living with HIV. So I have a lot of different experience and knowledge, and I'm just so excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite subjects because it's so important to how we feel about ourselves.
I absolutely and certainly agree. I thank you for being so such as Maria said a Well Project OG. You all have definitely carried this organization, to a point where I can and women like me can be a part of it, and I'm so grateful for this space. It wasn't until I became involved with the Well Project and like more in advocacy that I even realized that the language I was using about my own self, was impacting how I was experiencing this HIV diagnosis. Why did HIV, the language that we use to describe HIV, when did you realize that it was affecting, other things?
Oh, I get my journey, of course, it spans 36 years. So in the beginning, I heard a lot of messages coming from the media, from even social science, from even my providers, my family. But it wasn't until, oh my goodness, it was almost about 10 years ago that I was doing some work on myself. I'm in recovery. So part of being in recovery is taking a good look inside yourself. And I started paying attention to the terminology I was using in my own head to describe myself. And it didn't feel very good. It wasn't very nice. I used the messages that I heard from my parents, that I heard from society. I felt dirty, unclean, not worthy. Um, and at the same time, I was also working on my first master's degree. And so then I started looking and reading the terminology that was published in scientific journals. And I'm like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. What I'm reading, they're talking about me, but it feels so stigmatizing and so, othering. So we're being put in this other category that we're not part of the in group. So it started with me paying attention to what was in my head, and then I just started hearing and seeing that terminology everywhere, not just in relation to HIV, but in relation to substance use and mental health and even being overweight. I mean, there's so many areas of our life that language, it just plays such a huge role in how we feel.
Absolutely. And when I'm like, as a newly diagnosed person back in 2008, I relied heavily on the internet to give me information about what I was experiencing. And those those things that I was able to find definitely did not feel hopeful, and it made me feel like I was going to die. And you know, I don't know. I adopted the terminology because I was learning from Google, how I was supposed to do this. And the one thing, like infected, like HIV infected, or, somebody goes and takes a STD test and it comes back negative and they're clean. Or, I don't know, just all these things that were said had me questioning my own self and my own worth. And I didn't realize that it started with words. Um, Language. I'm reading a comment from Krista, which we're going to stop and address that. Vickie Lynn has had such a significant impact on the language we use at the Well Project in helping to advocate for people first language and how language can be so stigmatizing if we let it. Absolutely. And as a new member on the Well Project team, I can definitely see the effects of that. Like, we are always constantly, making sure that we're being inclusive. We're making sure that we are using people's first language. Um, and thank you. And hopefully, it's something that just continues to radiate out and that other people pick up on this as well, because it can affect someone's whole life. I wasn't so worried about what other people were saying. It's always like been that internal thing. So thank you for addressing it. Even, yes, being a bigger woman, you never realize how, the words that are being used to describe people that are not big, could affect you, or the substance use. So thank you a lot. What are some of the biggest changes that you have seen since you began doing this work when it comes to language?
It's so exciting because when I started doing this work, there was very little information out there. I was having to pull and really dig to find stuff. Um, and over the past 10 years, and I think especially during the past 3 years, I've just seen an explosion in all kinds of different disciplines on their focus on language. And it just makes me so happy to see other people talking about it and being more aware that how damaging this terminology can be. It just it warms my heart so much, and I have people reach out to me all the time. And somebody reached out to me the other day, and he said that it's not really stigmatizing language. He called it prejudicial language. And I'm like, that got me so excited because I had never heard somebody use that phrase. And then I started digging into that. And I just got a really great book that was written in 1954, The Nature of Prejudice. And it talks about the terminology and how we use that terminology to kind of other people and put them in, they're not in. Okay, so we have in groups and out groups, and when we use certain terminology, we're excluding people and putting them in an out group so they're not like us. So somehow that gives people permission to maybe discriminate against, or be biased against certain people based on the groups and labels that we define for them. It's so fascinating. I would love to actually do a really big research project to understand more about the language we use in our head. How does that impact our health? How does that impact how we navigate the world around us? I don't know if I did I get off topic. I might be doing that a little bit.
It's fine. Keep going. We could listen to you speak all day. Um, I have a question as you were saying that. Is there like one word or one term that rubs you the wrong way? Like specific.
I think that word is infected, infected. And when I was working with Valerie Wojciechowicz and we would do these presentations, she always wanted to include a picture of this open oozing sore. And I'm like, okay, we got to do a warning before we show the audience this. But we don't do a warning when we say that word and use it towards people. And we've heard it so much in relation to COVID even, and it just makes my skin crawl a little bit because when we hear a word, we often create an image in our head of what that word means to us. So that word infected, it is this open oozing sore. And we don't talk that way when we talk about cancer. We don't talk that way when we talk about diabetes, but somehow infected has got attached to HIV. So that is one of the biggest words. And other than that, people first language. And I still see it all the time, especially with researchers in the hard biological sciences, that we are HIV infected people. And that, oh, I just, if that is the last thing I do in my life is to get researchers to stop using that terminology and shift to people first language. It's a matter of a couple words shifting around, but it makes a world of difference because we are people. We we are not our diagnosis. We are so much more than that. And when we start sticking labels onto people like HIV infected woman, that really it's, I don't know if you've heard of that for 1,000 cuts. Well, that's what it feels like. So for the past 36 years, every time someone has said something stigmatizing or that I've read something stigmatizing, it's like this little cut on your body. And they can never really heal because you continue to get cut over and over and over again. So it's not that one instance of the stigmatizing language use, it's that ongoing over and over and over again until you're just so worn out you just can't take it anymore. And I think, we do that not only with language, we do that with other situations in our microaggressions. That's those little cuts over and over and over again.
So this conversation was not supposed to make me cry. Like I was supposed to be done with all of that. But as you were just speaking, getting cut over and over again, and it's usually me doing a lot of the cutting. Like I keep getting back to internalized stigma, but I know that that starts on the outside or thinking how I'm going to be perceived by those on the outside. So when I say something, okay, I am HIV infected, in my mind, that picture that is attached, a person that is HIV infected is nasty and they do not deserve good things in life and they deserve everything bad that comes their way. But in my head, if I'm able to, like, turn that around and help those around me to turn that language around to, I'm a woman living with HIV, because yes, that is one aspect of my life. That is one thing that I have going on, but I still deserve, the world. And I'm thinking, like, over here, how much I beat myself up on the inside. But just continuing to have this conversation, I think, would be extremely helpful, not just for our allies, but for the people that are actually living this experience every day.
Yes. One of my girlfriends told me many moons ago when I was working on myself, that if I offered you a crisp $100 bill, would you take it? Absolutely, right? Now, if I take that $100 bill and I crumple it up, would you still take it? Yeah. If I took that $100 bill and I dragged it through the mud and it got all dirty, would you still take it? Yes. The worth does not change depending on what we've gone through in life. Our worth is still the same. And using inspiring, empowering language really does makes such a difference in how we feel about ourselves. Um, oh, yes.
So, like, I'm not calling any organization out particularly, but I was reading, something, looking for some HIV facts. And all up and down their fact sheets is, infected, infected, infected. And I'm like, this is coming from big people. So, like, I can understand, why scientists and doctors and other people are still using this language, because a lot of the people that we look up to, to get our recommendations from it, they're still using the language. What can be done? Like, what, as an advocate, can I do to help, push the ball, to keep moving forward?
I think, gosh, because I've been doing this for so many years now and I've seen little movement, I think the best thing we can do is to use affirming language and less stigmatizing language for ourselves and be role models for others. Um, I think being gentle to talking with others about it is important. I remind my colleagues, I teach my students, and even I make mistakes. I've been doing this work, but even things will slip out of my mouth because I continue to hear it and read it and see it. it just kind of this quick thing. And it's like, whoa, I can't believe I just said that because I actually know better. And that's so uncomfortable. And I think awareness for what we're using to talk about ourselves, what we're using to talk about others, and just continue. I mean, I would love to change the world, but sometimes I know that that's a very hard and long process. But if we can change ourselves one woman at a time and just help to support other women in knowing their worth, because after reflecting on, all this work that I've done, I've come to believe that some of this noise is going to happen all the time, no matter what we do. There are going to be groups of people that will, unfortunately, use this language on purpose. So we've got to be strong enough in our self-worth to know that that's not about us. That is their stuff. And we can walk past that with our head held high, and not let, it's hard though. It is hard, that we don't internalize this, but we are all worthy. And if we can build our own self-esteem, build the self-esteem of the women around us, I think that that's gonna do a lot to make some changes.
I feel so empowered just after, hearing you speak, because it is so important. I love that Krista, I think she just put one of your blogs from 2014. So I guess you really are OG, about what started, the Well Project, getting the ball rolling and opening their eyes to it. Because I think sometimes even being in the field, and as knowing as much as sometimes it is hard, and we don't know everything, and you don't really know if you're offending somebody until the offense has taken place. So that grace and that gentleness and the softness, I think that is needed, but a firm stance on, this is not how I wish to be referred to, and this is not it. I thank you so much. um Bridget writes, our perception of ourself is reflected in how we present ourselves to others. She's so deep. She is so deep. Do you have anything to say to that statement?
That is, oh, my echoing is stopped. Yes, our perception is reflective on how we present ourselves. Um, oh gosh, I think back to when I was using substances. I used substances for a very long time because I did not like myself. I didn't believe in myself, didn't think I was worth anything. And I presented myself like that to the world because I didn't, my self worth and confidence was so low that my perception of myself, that's how I moved around the world. How I navigated my, discussions with others. And although I'm still a work in progress, because at times I don't feel like I'm fully confident, even though, I mean, I'm going to say I've got two master's degree and a PhD, and that I'm still the same person in the heart of it, but I've learned so much along the way. And something that I have found really interesting since I got my doctorate, when I present myself as Dr. Vickie Lynn versus Vickie living with HIV, I am treated so much differently in the healthcare system, in people I meet. It's just mind blowing, the difference. And I don't deserve to be treated any differently as Dr. Vickie Lynn or Vickie Lynn with HIV. We all deserve respect and dignity and grace. And yes, we should respect people and their titles, I suppose, but it's like another label. It's just a label. I'm still the same person. I don't deserve any more or less respect than any other woman in this world. And I think that starting to treat people with respect, no matter who they are or what they're going through, we don't know. It's just being respectful for everyone. We're going to help build their self esteem and courage And that's, for me, that's what it's about. I want to help inspire other people to be the best version of themselves. We've all been beaten down over our lives, especially women living with HIV. We have taken a lot in, and even women without HIV have experienced a lot of trauma and abuse. And well, I'm going to stop talking there.
I'm telling you, this could be the Vickie Lynn show. You got it. I feel so encouraged, just hearing you speak. Krista says, while there are many providers who use people first language, I've had numerous experiences where doctors or researchers get defensive when I try to advocate for them to update to people first language after a presentation, for example. Have you experienced that as well?
Yes, absolutely. And the good news is there's more information coming out in the research world about the use of language. So the American Public Health Association, I think, has some stuff out about language. Some of the journal editors. So, when we do research and we submit it for publications in a research journal, editors are starting to pay more attention. They're starting to put out language guides. So if you want to publish in our research journal, this is the language you need to use. There's a whole chapter in the American Psychological Association formatting guide on biased language, and a complete chapter on it. So it's getting out there. It's slow and changing, and people get. I actually, oh goodness, there was a publication written from a scientist in Greece, and I'm actually Greek. I'm half Greek. Um, and he was talking about stigma and women living with HIV, but throughout his article, the stigmatizing terminology that he used was just mind blowing. So I actually wrote a letter to him, and the way he responded, we won't even talk about that. But sometimes I call people out. I will write reporters. I will talk to scientists and tell them. And sometimes I'm met with hostility because this is the way it's done. This is the way it's always done. This is what I read in other scientific journals. So I'm just repeating that. But we are starting to see a shift, and that's the good news. And I think the National Allergy and Infectious Disease of the United States actually put out recently a language guide as well. So the information's getting there. It's just slow. System level changes are really slow. You mute.
Thank you. I said, even as a fairly new advocate, I'm seeing how slow those changes can be as well. I was diagnosed in 2008, so I'm 13 years positive, and I've seen some changes. So I was going to ask you something like you equals you, which I'm so grateful for a campaign such as that. How has that impacted how we're able to use the language used to describe HIV?
I think that's incredibly powerful because it reduces our understanding of the disease, and know that. And when that messaging first came out, actually Bruce contacted Valerie and me because they were going to be undetectable is uninfectious. And we're like, oh no, you can't. You please don't use that. So we made some changes with that terminology, and I think it's incredibly powerful because HIV is simply a virus. That's all it is a virus. And I think now with the COVID pandemic, the people are being more educated on what a virus is and how it can be transmitted. So I think we can use that to educate people further on HIV is simply a virus. Yes, it has a very interesting way of being transmitted, but it is simply a virus and nothing more than that. And the U equals U message has empowered people around the globe to have more confidence in themselves and the relationships that they have. I'm just like, I've seen so much change over the past 36 years. I got to pinch myself sometimes.
I can only imagine. I love speaking to long term survivors because, 13 years diagnosed, I could never call myself a long term survivor, although it feels like these have been long days sometimes, so I like to pin myself as like a midterm survivor. I don't know. I definitely did not experience, what you all may have back then, but in the year 2008, even 2021, it can still be kind of rough, starting with the language and stigma. So something like you equals you coming out, that took me from saying to my partners that there's a 2% chance that I could transmit HIV to you, and that sounds much different than, oh, I can't transmit it because undetectable equals untransmittable. So even that, like that makes me feel good about myself. That makes me feel it makes me feel good because I was one of those ones who would always refer to myself as I'm HIV infected. Like I would never use people's first language, and that made me feel really, really bad. Because I'm infected, I don't want to infect you, and I'm sort of something like a plague. I don't, you. I don't deserve to be in your space. Why would you even want to put yourself in my space? Now, I'm no threat. You would think that having the first child, would have taught me that, or I would have been more comfortable to walk in it. But just the language that continues, and being a person that does a lot of social media stuff, you see a lot of not knowing, in comments or, in posts. And I try to sometimes gently, maybe get in the inbox of the person who posted misinformation and let them know that there are other ways to handle that. But other people just, the ignorance is there. I had a girl
Yes.
one time tell me that she would fight me, but she didn't want to catch AIDS. It's like, what? What? We're still doing this in 2021, but I think continuing to, as you said, start with ourselves and continue to be role models. I think that that will go a far way. I mean, you're a testament to that.
Yes. And I would really like anyone, I really want to urge any scientists, and if there's any scientists or researchers listening to this, to use respectful language. Because if you're researching about people living with HIV, you need to respect the people that you're working with. The Denver Principles came out in 1983, and that on the research that I'm done, that is the first written information about people first language. I can't. There are some stories that it maybe have started in the mental health community that at conferences, but the only documented evidence that I can find around people first language is the Denver Principles. We are not AIDS infected patients. We are people living with an AIDS diagnosis. And we've seen some other shifts in relation to that. And I know that there are some talk in the community that people are trying to get rid of the word AIDS. And I don't think anyone's trying to get rid of the word AIDS. We just want to make sure that it's being used appropriately, that it's scientifically based. A lot of people confuse AIDS and HIV. And I know in the early days when I was doing some of the workshops, I would tell people that you can't transmit AIDS. AIDS cannot be transmitted from one person to the other. And literally, case managers in the room are like shocked. They're like, but no, AIDS is a diagnosis. It's a syndrome. It's not the virus. HIV is the virus. So when we're talking about HIV, we need to use HIV. When we're talking about an AIDS diagnosis, then we use AIDS diagnosis or stage 3 HIV. But Bridget just brought up full blown AIDS. Oh my goodness. I did a Google scholarly search. So in the research literature, the term full blown AIDS is still being published today. It's still being published. There's no medical definition. There's no half blown AIDS. So scientists are using this terminology that has no definition. So we need editors. We need people to kind of make sure that that's not happening anymore. Oh, that I can't stand that term. And I actually just saw it the other day. Somebody said a full blown HIV. And I'm like, what is that? Please stop.
I know. I guess we're all in each other's head because I was, as soon as I heard AIDS, it's like full blown AIDS. I don't like it. But before I was positive, there were Like, I thought that that was a thing. I never knew. And being that I never thought that HIV would ever have anything to do with me, I never thought that the terminology would have anything to do with me. That's sort of those people's issues. And I think that being intentional and paying attention, I think has definitely allowed me to grow in that area. Like, absolutely, the words that we use to describe each other definitely matter. And when we're in our different friend groups and circles, continuing to carry that conversation over, I think will help someone walking away from that conversation, and maybe in their next conversation, they are a little bit more cognizant of what, they're saying, because it greatly affects, you know, being a grown person, I would never say that sticks and bones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Words definitely hurt. I still remember things that were said to me in my childhood that I can't, seem to bury. So, yes, absolutely.
Yes, and it's paying attention to what we say in our minds and then changing that message. So, what is it? What are the words that I'm using to describe myself? Ooh, when it sounds uncomfortable, write it down and then think of something else that you can replace that with. And when that thought comes up, replace that thought. And it takes some work. It takes some awareness of what's going on with you, and just it's changing those messages. As well, cognitive behavioral therapy, that's what we do. We try to change the messages, and it starts with yourself. And I know I've said some horrible things about myself for a very, very long time. And yes, I repeated some of the things that my parents said. um, One thing my father told me, when I don't know, I was probably 7 years old, and I think that I called my sister or my brother stupid. And my dad sat me down and had a conversation that people are not stupid. Behaviors are stupid, choices might be stupid, but people themselves are not stupid. And I think that that really has stuck with me all my life, that when we use terminology, when we're describing other people, it really does make a difference in how they feel about themselves, how they look at other people. And well, okay, well, I'll stop there for now.
Bridget mentioned language as a form of self care. She's so dope.
Oh,
Like, I
yes.
love that. I would have never thought that. But thank you so much for bringing it, to the forefront. Yes, language is a form of self care. I guess I do it because I recite like affirmations and things like that, but I don't know. It's just something
Self.
you do. It's not like self care. But yes, it is. Thank you, Bridget.
I like that. That's excellent.
I heard that you helped write that Why Language Matters fact sheet, you and Olivia. Krista wrote it. This is the fact sheet Vickie Lynn helped to author. Is regularly reviewed and updated by our fab editorial director, Olivia Ford, as language is ever evolving. I think that's a very important point. Like, we could change something today, and then we realize that maybe that wasn't, the best move, or that it could be done better. And it's forever evolving. Um,
And then not all groups are comfortable with people first language. The autistic community prefers identity first language. I think people first language should definitely be used when we're talking about health and health issues, but for autistic people, they prefer us to use identity first language because autism is a part of who they are, and it's not something that they want to get rid of, so to speak. So they prefer us to use that. And sometimes it is asking people what is their preferred language, just like we're asking about pronouns. It's being okay with how others want to describe themselves.
Thank you for sharing it, because that I've never known that, and that was going to be my next question. Like, how do you know? And I said it earlier. Like, you don't usually know that you offended someone until after it has taken place. So, how can you like jump ahead of that? Like, do you become involved? Do you know in certain groups? We've already discussed that sometimes the scientific, things that are put out aren't using the best language either. But how do you know?
I think sometimes it's about having hard conversations, and not just in relation to HIV, in relation to racism and prejudice and oppression and everything else. I would love to see um, community organizations having monthly meetings maybe and sitting down and talking about the language they're using, whether that's in relation to HIV or mental health, whatever it is. It's having those hard conversations, because sometimes you might be in an office space and somebody says this joke that's not really funny, it's very offensive. So we need to be able to comfortably talk to our colleagues and talk to other people and have these conversations, and be able to comfortably, okay, we talk about microaggressions, well, we also need to talk about micro interventions, so that when somebody says something to us, that we're able to come back and say something that, wow, that really hurt, or that, that didn't feel so good for me, can you not use that again, or it. And so that's bravery sometimes, because a lot of times I didn't stick up for myself because I didn't feel good about myself. Today I stick up probably too much, but we're learning and growing in beautiful ways every day. And I think bringing others on that journey with us, it's having those hard conversations with our colleagues, with our family and friends. Even sometimes we got to start there, because they're using things that hurt us, especially now we got the holidays coming up, so we're all going to be getting with our families, and they may be saying things that are hurtful, and it is pulling them aside or sending them an instant, a private message, not calling them out in front of a group, but pulling them aside if we need to. But even doing it in front of a group, if we can say that, if we feel safe enough saying that, because safety is so very important.
Let's see. Crystal was saying that in a recent meeting that it got brought up how birth control is problematic because it's basically another form of controlling women's bodies. Contraception is the preferred term. Have you ever thought of that?
I didn't. I haven't had to use contraceptive in a long time. So that, that is very powerful. But I love that. I love that this is expanding, because unfortunately, a lot of the terminology surrounding women in medical books is very stigmatizing and othering and controlling. I love that. Oh my gosh. I see another fact coming out.
All right, we down for it. Bridget was talking about having those hard conversations. I am a firm believer, and it definitely can begin with a conversation, whether that, is asking your partner if they've been tested, for STDs, STIs, HIV. Talking about, any past traumas. I know that it isn't always the easiest or the most comfortable thing to do, but I definitely think that they go a far way. Um, I saw something else. Oh, Krista's just bigging you up in the comments. Have you presented at national conferences on language?
Yes, I've done a few national conferences on language, and they were well received. The people in the audience were very receptive of it. Oh my gosh. See, and it's so important for our children that we're being more cognizant of what we say. I mean, I know, and you mentioned it earlier, as we're growing up, some of the terminology or things our parents might have said or our classmates might have said that our teachers might, they, that's those little cuts that we're getting, and they end up becoming deep wounds for some of us. You know, I was called stupid. You can't do anything right. And those are things that you start to, well, if this person that I respect greatly is using this terminology about me, then maybe I'm not good enough, and oh, I love your little baby. And it's being mindful of what we say to our children in front of our children. Oh, it's so incredibly powerful.
Thank you. I guess she's just staring up at me now. Hold on. Say hi to everybody. Say
Oh,
hello. Say hey.
yay.
We're learning about language, okay? So my teacher, I think I was in the fourth grade, And we were living in a women's abuse shelter, my mom and my brother and my sister and I. So leaving from the shelter and going to this new school, and I remember her name. I remember exactly what she looked like in her red glasses. And she asked me one day, "Why do you act so hopeless?" So I said to my mom later on in the car, I'm like, "Mom, what does hopeless means?" Because I didn't even know that it was something that was negative, or could have been perceived as negative in that instance. And mommy explained it to me, and she said, "Why did you ask me that?" And she went and advocated on my behalf as a child to that teacher that you don't use these types of words, because you don't know where you're meeting someone at. Like, that was a very vulnerable and traumatic time in my life. And for that to come from a teacher who was someone that I respected and that was in a place of power. Like, I remembered it to this day on. I'm like, I'm not hopeless. I'm not hopeless. I'm not helpless. Like, I can do this. And just to think that that is something that I've carried with me for so long, I guess that would be one of those cuts. That
It's so interesting that those moments stick out for us and we remember them. But there may have been other times where the teacher told you you were smart and you were beautiful and you could do things, but we don't really remember those for some reason as much as we remember those cuts, those wounds, those attacks on us. Sometimes is how I feel. That's why it's so important for awareness, to be aware of what we're using in our own head and changing that. It's incredibly powerful.
So if I had imagined, or if I could have imagined during my childhood that I had like a crown on and all of the positive things were like being stacked up, if I could have visualized that, maybe I could have held on to some of those kinder things that were said. It just, I felt it a little deeper. I still feel the negative things. I'll push a comment to the side, but something negative that said, I'm going to harp on that. I'm going, beat myself up for it sometimes even. But just, yes, painting a different picture in my mind, I think, would definitely help and be beneficial for me moving forward. Let's see. Bridget's into this conversation. She said,
Opposing here. Oh,
"Oh, you see Bose? Hey, Bose."
oh.
I love this community. I love that there is a sisterhood of someone that will understand. Because if I tried to explain these things to some of my family members or friends, they wouldn't understand why it's a big deal. Someone had to check me one day on using the term partner. So, like, okay, well, I have a boyfriend, a fiance, a husband, whatever, and them explaining to me that using the term partner wasn't so much for me, but it was for other people who may be having an issue with the terminology that's being used or being offended by that. And I never thought about it. It's not so much, a personal, just like singular experience. This is a whole community, and just because it isn't directly affecting me doesn't mean that it isn't affecting someone else. So I'm really appreciative for moments like that. Someone did, pull me to the side. Even I don't have my pronouns up today, but that has been something that I have been trying to get better at. It's, yes, I know, my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I need to make that explicit sometimes because it may not affect me so much, but it could, our next sister. And definitely never want to. I love how Dr. Egu said, I never want to be a part of someone else's trauma. So if I can
Yes.
play my part. So, are you going to say something?
I was going to say that's incredibly powerful. Yes. I've switched to saying partner, and I think I've done that, I don't know, for a long time now. My partner. It's so important for other people to be seen and understood, and that's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. I'm just making sure we haven't missed any comments or anything. So I think that we are all caught up. My the language that I use I'm so grateful that I have these little sponges around me now. So I feel like me using this language and even just talking about HIV, unconventionally, outside sometimes in the real world, HIV gets this bad connotation as well as AIDS. But we just sit here and talk about it. It's normal here. Zion can go get my meds. Zion, what is HIV? Just having those conversations. And I quizzed him last night, and he didn't seem to have picked up on anything. So I think, once again, this is a conversation that you have to keep having. It's not like we can just do it one time and it be it and everyone catch on, because that definitely is not the case. Um, do you have anything that you would like to add? Is there anything that you've missed?
I just want to first thank the Well Project. They have been so instrumental in supporting me in my journey, and helping so many women. And I know advocating for HIV issues and even being an activist, I marched with ACT UP in the early days, that what I have come to find that system level changes are difficult and changing the world is difficult. However, when you can form a community or network of like-minded people, that's where your strength is going to come from. Sometimes we have to shut out the rest of the noise and just and work within the people that understand us, the people that can support us and continue to build that network. And I want every woman to know, whether they're living with HIV or not, that they are worthy, that they can dream and do whatever it is that they want to do. And I'm going to use me as an example. I contracted HIV in 1985 during an intimate. I was in a relationship with intimate partner violence. I was homeless, living under a bridge. I was a substance user. I woke up every morning of my life looking for dope, and I was able to overcome that and go to school and get a couple degrees under my belt. And I want other women to know that they can do the same thing. And I'm here to support you in your dreams and goals. If you want to go back to school, or if you want to follow a trade and you need some help, support, and guidance, I am here to help you. I'll help you edit your entrance, essays, whatever it is that you need, because I think that I didn't do this by myself. I didn't get to where I am today by myself. Other people believed in me, supported me, and helped me, and I want to be that for other people.
Oh, I love that. The comment just came up. I think it's okay. One thing I think Kim brought up is the language around vertical transmission. We've stopped using mother to child transmission. I know many born with HIV or acquired HIV at birth refer to themselves as verticals, but that doesn't feel comfortable for others to use that terminology.
Interesting. Oh, that's powerful. Which makes me want to have a conversation with those to understand that a little bit more. They call themselves verticals.
Yes, I hear it all the time. So that's an example. I wouldn't think that that would be offensive. Like, that's what I hear them calling themselves. So I just thought that that's the thing to do. I didn't know that it was politically incorrect or correct. Like, or that someone would be uncomfortable with using it. It's verticals. They,
Interesting.
yeah, okay. Okay, okay.
We definitely need to understand more about how language impacts us internally and how we navigate the world. Yes. Interesting.
Absolutely. Language should be part of trauma informed care. Absolutely. I my sister was telling me a story about a lady at work who kept she wasn't trained yet. So they kept saying, "Oh, she can't do that. She can't do that. She can't do that." And eventually the lady just snapped, and not knowing that they were triggering things that were already going on in her mind. Oh, she can't do that. It's like, no, I'm capable. I'm fully capable of everything. Stop saying that. So I've definitely applauded that lady in the moment for being able to stand up for herself. And I think it was a learning lesson for everyone there, is that we may trigger something in people sometimes that we aren't even aware is happening. Olivia. It is also really important to remember self identity and the importance of that. Ultimately, every term can't be comfortable for everybody. One person's empowerment can be another's trigger. We can only strive to reduce the harm language can cause. I love
Oh,
that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, because I guess it would be really hard to please everybody in any situation. But how do we self identify? Thank you, Olivia.
yeah.
Magnificent. I love this community. And using language as a way to keep lifting up people. I think that being in such a virtual space, everything is so, technology is at the forefront of almost everything that we're doing now. So we may not be speaking so many words to each other, but even the language that we use to type and to communicate. And okay, I thought I was missing something. Um, Even the intentionality sometimes between whether or not we capitalize words, because we aren't speaking to each other and we're having to read behind this guy's a computer screen most of the time. Being respectful in how you talk to people through your communication, whether it's written or spoken, I think is very, very, very important. Like, not using all caps, because stop yelling at me. All right. Well, I think that this has been an excellent way to end this year with A Girl Like Me Live. Thank you so much for taking part of our first kickoff episode and the one to kind of conclude this year. This has been amazing. I feel so empowered and inspired, and maybe I can go get another master's and a PhD. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But thank you so much. Let's make sure that we have closed up everything on the end. Yes, we have. So, once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining this week's session of A Girl Like Me Live. Once again, thank you, Vickie. We love you so much. Thank you for being a part of the Well Project community. If you have not yet, Bridget, hush. If you have not yet completed our survey, that is still available. The link will be in the comment section at some point. Your responses help us continue to make sure that our programming is meeting the needs of our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. We love you, and I hope that you have a great day.
Thank you.